Let's have a little conversation about Max Meyer and Hunter Brown up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Tuesday, April 22nd. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Let's have a little conversation, Scott. Talk about Max Meyer and Hunter Brown. First up, Max Meyer. Man, what a start against the Reds. 6 shutout innings, 5 hits, 0 walks, 14 strikeouts, 24 whiffs on 92 pitches, 16 of those coming on the slider. I texted you and Chris earlier in the night when we were recording this. What if Max Meyer is this year's Garrett Crochet? What do you think, Scott? Is that possible?
Well, I think from the perspective that he looks like a dominant misser, and inning for inning, he's going to be really effective. But there are likely to be pretty severe limitations with the supporting cast at being terrible. And also, there might be some limitations with the workload too. Maybe not to the extreme we saw with Crochet, where he's going 4 innings at a time in the second half, but at some point they're going to have to curtail the innings for Max Meyer, who has never even reached 115 before. So yeah, I think that makes sense, which isn't to say next year we'll be drafting Max Meyer as a top 10 pitcher necessarily, but look, he looks really good. He looks really good. This was obviously the best start of all. 14 strikeouts, 24 swinging strikes, 16 on the slider, which he threw 16 on the slider, which he threw 43% of the time. But that is a pitch that Max Meyer has been leaning on upward of 40% consistently. It is his most thrown pitch. He leads with the slider. And with all the whiffs it got in this start, it's probably going to have better than a 50% whiff rate on the year. Now, a 40% whiff rate on a pitch is great. That's exactly what you're looking for. Normally, it's a secondary offering. To have your most thrown pitch thrown more than 40% of the time, have not just a 40% whiff rate, but a 50% whiff rate, I think that's pretty incredible and speaks so much to Meyer's potential. With just a little bit of extra velocity and a couple of lightly used pitches to round out his arsenal, we have seen his stock soar this year and him live up to the potential that once made him the 3rd overall pick in his draft. So I think this was the big coming out party for Max Meyer, and you can just plan to keep him in your lineup for the foreseeable future. And maybe at some point we'll need to sell high if the innings begin to accumulate.
Let's slide over to Hunter Brown, who continues to dominate. He is now 5 for 5 in quality starts this season. He threw 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts against the Toronto Blue Jays here on Monday. And the control is much improved. The velocity is up this year. The fastball, the sinker are dominating for Hunter Brown. And I'm starting to believe, Scott, that if he can maintain some level of control like that, maybe not exactly like this, but improved control, we might get a borderline SP1 season here out of Hunter Brown.
Yeah. So what I see in Hunter Brown here is not really like he's made one obvious transformation that has led to a step forward. First of all, he was already pretty good, a consensus top 30 pitcher coming into the year. I believe that's right. So there was already a lot to like, but you mentioned the control, nearly halving his walk rate, and also the ground ball rate, which is already good. It's up to 58% now. So I don't know that either of those numbers, the amount of improvement there is totally sustainable for Hunter Brown, but I like to see that the areas where I already thought he could excel, he's doing even better. And I think this makes the upside for him something similar to Max Fried, particularly if he can sustain those control games. Max Fried, good ground ball pitcher, good control pitcher. Maybe Hunter Brown can be that. I think like Max Fried, there are limits to the strikeout upside. He's never had a particularly good swinging strike rate, and maybe he can get up to a strikeout per inning, but I don't think there's going to be much beyond that. And if the walks do come back, okay, maybe the whip will start to run hot and he won't quite get to Max Fried level production. But I think that's in the conversation for Brown now with what we've seen so far.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be back right after this.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball Today. Let's get into some news and notes. And the biggest news of the day is that the A's promoted their top prospect, Nick Kurtz, but there's just not really enough time on this specific podcast to talk about that. We did dedicate an entire emergency episode to talking about Nick Kurtz. So check that out in the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast feed. A couple other news items, Scott, that stood out. This just feels like some kind of cruel joke, but it is real. Spencer Strider was placed in the IL with a strained right hamstring. He suffered the injury while playing catch, which just sucks.
I know it's such a gut punch after all that long wait, all the hoopla of his return, and now he's right back on the IL. The good news is it's not an injury to his elbow or his arm in general, but a hamstring injury could still sideline him for 4 to 6 weeks potentially. It just depends how bad it is, and we don't know how bad it is. Maybe it's a minimal stay. It's possible. But if it goes on for multiple weeks, then there's going to need to be some kind of ramp up period. You just got to stick Strider back in your IL spot, and hope he comes back sooner than later.
The Brewers have promoted reliever Craig Yoho, who last season in the minors, a .94 ERA, .94 WHIP, 15.8 K per nine. He had 10 saves, 5 holds. Looks like the stuff is going to be just absolutely dominant. Now, I'm not just pushing Trevor McGill to the side, Scott. There is a chance Yoho is the closer of the future for this team. I still think that is McGill right now. Are you looking to add Craig Yoho in any of those deeper roto leagues?
Yeah, I think the deeper roto leagues, the sort where you kind of have to speculate on saves, because anytime a new closer option emerges on the waiver wire, he's going to go for like a quarter of your fab budget. I think that it might be appropriate to pick up Yoho in those formats. And I do think he becomes the new backup plan for saves. If things don't work out for Trevor McGill, I do think things are going to work out for Trevor McGill. I know he's been a little shaky early on, has had some minor health stuff going on, but I think he's a fine closer and will hold on to the job. But just in case he doesn't, Yoho has huge upside and is probably the closer of the future. Now, if McGill were to lose his job tomorrow, I would imagine with Yoho just being called up, they would turn to somebody like Abner Uribe instead. But I don't think McGill is going to lose his job tomorrow. So I'm calling Yoho the backup plan.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.